Hello and welcome to the Larson Hicks show / channel. It's good to have you on. Thanks for tuning in. Today I want to talk about wealth and about the love of money and about all of those kinds of things. Big issues in the Christian world and a lot of debate, a lot of confusion, I think, probably. There's some parts of the church who think that money is evil because didn't the Bible say that money was evil? And there's other parts of the church that have completely baptized greed and said, well, all greed is good because we're free market, Ayn Rand style conservatives, and of course, pursuing anything but maximum profit is just evil. So, where is the truth? What does Scripture have to say about this? Well, let's dive in. I've pulled up a couple of verses here, a couple places in Scripture. So I'll start by looking at this is probably the most classic, standard verse that people go to. It's from 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verses 6 through 10. It says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs." So it's interesting because the passage that got me thinking about this week was actually from Ecclesiastes, and this had got me thinking about this. My son and I were talking about the love of money. He had read this passage from Timothy and was asking me, so. If we love money, if we pursue making money, is that evil? Are we? Because he was reading the King James, and it says, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." It doesn't even have the kinds of evil, and it doesn't say. I think it says the root and not a root. So it sounds very definitive, and it sounds like that's what that's saying. So first of all, we don't want to try to explain this away. This is true. This is all true. This is Scripture. So it's talking about how the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And it's through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. What's one of the interesting things about this verse is that passage I was looking at in Ecclesiastes. Actually, I think there's a callback here to this passage from in Timothy. So this is Ecclesiastes 5. Starting in verse 13, "There is a grievous evil that I've seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt, and those riches were lost in a bad venture, and he is a father of a son, but has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and he shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand. This is also a grievous evil. Just as he came, he shall go, and what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation, sickness, and anger." So there's a callback. If you look at Timothy, verse 7, this is chapter 6, verse 7, "For we brought nothing into this world and cannot take anything out of it." And then you look at verse 5 here from Ecclesiastes 5. It says, "As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came." So I think these passages are actually related. I think the author of I think Paul in his letter to Timothy was actually referencing probably this passage. So very familiar passage talking about the same topic, the about riches and about the futility in Ecclesiastes, certainly the futility of somebody who keeps riches to his own hurt, that were lost in a venture, and so it was just vanity. I think what he's saying here, and we'll look at other sections of this section in Scripture just to kind of compare and get more context. But just very quickly, the Timothy passage is talking about contentment. Godliness with contentment is great gain. And then here in Ecclesiastes, he's talking about riches being kept by their owner, and being lost in a bad venture, and this just providential situation where somebody who has a bunch of riches ends up with nothing. This happens. This happens in the world that God made, where people work and make a bunch of money and think that they're going to have an inheritance for their kids, and then they don't. And it says in verse 16 there, so shall he go, and what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? So what is he toiling for? He's toiling for vanity. He's toiling for riches. And that is a great vanity. So I'm going to move on to, let's look at let's just back up a couple verses in Ecclesiastes 5, because I think there's kind of these two sections of Ecclesiastes. This chapter 5 is about this topic, but there's two sections that I think are kind of juxtaposed to each other. They're sort of two different ways of approaching money or thinking about money. And this is the bad way. So he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. And this also is vanity. So we saw a second ago, he talked about how, he had this wealth and lost it, and it was all vanity. Well, this is what he's talking about. Somebody who loves wealth, and going back to the Timothy passage, right? The love of money leads to all kinds of evil. And in this case, vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? So, in other words, mo money, mo problems, is what Solomon is teaching us here in Ecclesiastes. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. You got more money, you got more problems, you got more mouths to feed, more stuff to worry about. Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. So again, more money, more problems. You have when you own a lot of things, when you own a lot of stuff, when you have productive property, whether it's real estate or it's a business, it comes with a lot of stress. It comes with a lot of problems. It comes with a lot of people that need to be fed, people that need to be paid. And so the laborer, the slave, the laborer, the person who doesn't have any money, doesn't have any problems and can just sleep, can just work, be tired, go to bed, not think about or worry about tomorrow. It's not his responsibility. And so Solomon in his wisdom here is teaching about the vanity of loving money. If your pursuit, if your desire is money, is riches in and of themselves, you're foolish. And it would be much, much wiser for you to just be a laborer and just enjoy your work. Because if you just love money for the sake of money, if you're not pursuing a calling, if you're not pursuing stewardship of the gifts and of the tasks that God has given you, then you're just asking for more problems that perhaps you're not cut out for, you're not prepared for. So let's look at what I think he's juxtaposing to this passage, which is just a couple verses down in Ecclesiastes 5 verses 18 through 20. Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. So, you hear that phrase, time flies when you're having fun, right? And that's basically what verse 20 is saying. He'll not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied in the joy in his heart. So time flies when you're having fun, and there's nothing better than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in your toil. To love the work that God's given you, to love the lot that God's given you, and to pursue it with joy, and to be like that laborer who has sweet sleep. But you have sweet sleep because you're focused on the work. You're focused on the calling. I've given this talk. I think there's a video on my channel about seasons of a man's life, and that's totally 100% ripped off from my friend Rod Ulp's You should check it out if you haven't. But that whole video is all about the pursuit of calling, and I think this is the danger. I just did a conference thing, mini conference thing in Huntsville about family-based businesses and recovering this biblical and ancient idea of the institution of the household and acquiring productive property. And all of that's good, and I'm not backing out of any of that. But if we're pursuing it for its own sake, then we're missing the mark. And the talk I gave, I had limited time, and I didn't get into this topic of calling, but it's really a key to the whole discussion is pursue your calling, and what that looks like practically is trying a lot of things probably early in your life, and experimenting and not pursuing the quickest way towards making the most money. If you do that, you're going to be like the people that we've already read about. It's vanity, and it's going to be more money and more problems, and you're going to and if that was the pursuit, if the end you had in mind was more money, then you're going to be like the guy that we read about who loses it all in a bad deal. That happens. And then what? And what did you spend all your life on? If you weren't pursuing something that brought you joy and satisfaction, where you felt like I'm doing the thing that God made me to do, I'm being a good steward of the gifts He's given me, whether it's just talents or it's actually money or it's inheritance, or it's opportunities. Be a good steward of those and labor in them with joy, and trust God, for the increase. Trust God for the outcome. If we're doing that, we can avoid this. I think we can avoid this this trap of making riches, of making wealth the goal. It's not the goal. But this is the cool thing, is that God, in verse 19, everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. So it's a gift that God gives His people. He often gives His people. He loves to give His people wealth. There's not a wealth equals evil, possessions equal evil. There's temptations and there's dangers that come along with having those things, and especially if you make those things an end in and of themselves. But I've seen this. I've got great examples in my life. I'd actually say my mom is a really wonderful example in my life of somebody who has most of her life had money, had access to money. Her parents were very wise with their money and invested in things, and my mom inherited that productive property. And my mom's been a good steward of those things. But I can't say that I've experienced with my mom, and we're pretty close and we talk pretty regularly. I don't know that I've ever really heard her stressing out about money. It's not an idol. It's not something she spends a ton of time and energy trying to grow. But she's trying to be faithful with it, and she's found ways to take the inheritance she's been given, that her parents left her in real estate, and continue to use those and to give generously for the kingdom. But she also is turning a profit on them. She's reinvesting in things that she's good at doing. Like she's got an Airbnb now on the beach, and she's awesome at making beautiful, hospitable places that people love to be in. And lo and behold, her property down there is doing really well. So she's a wonderful example to me of what an appropriate use of wealth, an appropriate perspective on wealth is. And just to kind of close it out, let's look again at that 1 Timothy chapter 6 passage. This is the end of the passage. And it says in verse 17, "As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good and to be rich in good works and to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life." So this is the same passage. This is the same place where Paul is warning against the love of money, and how it causes people to stumble into all manner of sin. But then he turns around and ends the passage, that chapter, with here's how to think about the folks in your congregation, in your community, who are rich. Timothy, pastor, charge them not to be haughty, and charge them not to set their hopes on riches. Again, I think he's calling back this passage in Ecclesiastes. Naked you came into this world, and naked you were going to go out of it. You could lose all of it in a bad deal. Set your heart on being a good steward of those things that God's given you, to be rich in good works, rich in doing good, being generous and ready to share, and in doing those things, you're storing up treasure for yourself. So I hope that helps. I think the big kind of revelation for me was this idea that riches are that if we set our hope and our desire and our goal on acquiring riches, then we're setting ourselves up for disappointment, because we all should know that God takes, God gives, He takes away in His wisdom, in His providence, and there's no certainty, in any of these things. And so if your focus and your desire and your energy and your efforts are all aimed at how do I acquire more money, how do I get rich, then I think you're pointed in the wrong direction. If, however, you desire to be a good steward of your time and your talents, and to be a good to abound in good works and service to God and to His kingdom, and that leads you to find your calling and to find things that you are able to do very well and be excellent at, then don't be surprised if you end up with riches, with financial gain, but hold it loosely and hold it and use it, put it to work for God's glory, and I think you can avoid the ditch here on either side of wealth. I think that it's a mistake for Christians to believe that wealth is a necessary evil, and because it's not. It's a tool, and God is king and owns the gold under 1,000 hills and the cattle on them. So God is wealthy. God pours out His wealth generously to His people. And so wealth is a tool, it's a resource, and we should be eager to acquire it as a result of faithfulness and obedience and hard work. So I hope that helps. I'll just go back and say, look at the two examples in Ecclesiastes. I think these two passages, 1 Timothy 6 and Ecclesiastes 5, give us really a very balanced view of wealth, and I think it's a mistake to take the one verse about the love of money out of the context of the passage, and out of the context of the passage that I think Paul is referencing back in Ecclesiastes. So look at these verses again, and I think you'll arrive at what I believe is wisdom, just wisdom on the topic of money and on the topic of work. Hope that's helpful. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.